So there's...
And as we enter the Oasis, the role of Elizabeth Sherman, or just Liz, will be played by my mysterious business partner.
Damn, I hate these guys.
Liz was born with very dangerous pyrokinetic powers. She was able to keep these powers in check through most of her childhood until a boy pulled on her ponytails just a little too hard at age 11. In the ensuing flames, she destroyed the entire city block as well as her family. She was passed around to extended family members before eventually being carted off to the BPRD, where she remained massively depressed until Hellboy offered her comfort. Pretty depressing.
You came.
I, didn't know I was expected.
There are always expectations. This is your burden.
Tell me about it. So, what do you expect of me?
We could only trap the creature. We had not the material to destroy it. After the battle, only fragments remained of our vanguard. All we could do was seal our energy in an emblem of our resistance. This sufficed before they came.
They got a habit of doing that.
But then they died, and we thought all would be well. The creature, however, had different ideas. It reached up, bound their bodies to their task, and to it. They now slave on and will not cease until history is unburied and the world is unmade.
That's a mouthful of mission statement. Guess I gotta do something about it.
Only you can wield our standard and destroy the beast for good.
I get that a lot.
Remember, not all expectations can be fulfilled.
So it sounds like Nazis came through again, and they managed to dig up an ancient creature that was imprisoned by a noble alien race. Way to go, guys. It's fair to assume that is the creature that the friendly fellow back there was talking about, and he said that it bound the Nazis to its task, meaning that we're going to reasonably probably be fighting some zombie Nazis soon. And as MVP completely fails to hit it, I'm going to throw this sword at it. It appears that the creature is weak to these orange crystals, and the swords, supposedly the swords made from that alien man back there and whatever civilization this used to be before the Nazis rampaged through. Liz here does not carry bullets of any sort, but again, she can kill things with mind fire, so that's not really necessary. And here are the zombie Nazis we were promised. They too are weak to the crystals and swords as they are under control of the creature. However, normally they take a massive amount of hits. Luckily the game is merciful and you do not have to kill them all to get rid of most ghost barriers in this chapter. Liz is very useful to have around during this stage as her attacks instantly stun all enemies, and by stun I mean it makes them flop over. In addition, her attacks cover quite a large range. The only downside to her is that it takes a while before she can use her attacks again, leaving her vulnerable. However, she has a rather nasty area attack, which knocks everybody back for quite a distance, so that's not much a problem either. As you can see, while MVP is distracting that massive mob out front, we're going into this little cave in here to see what sort of interesting goodies we can dig up. This stage is very loud. It's probably safe to assume that the Nazis were here once again to gain control of this horrible creature and access its power. That never ever seems to go well, so it's anyone's guess why they keep trying. Over here we have the first artifact, and reasonably easy to miss at that, considering you don't even need to head over here. We can see that there is a surplus of digging equipment around, supporting our theory that the Nazis were trying to mess with the creature to gain access to its power somehow. It's unclear exactly what the alien species, assuming it's a species, judging from that one fellow we met back there, were doing here in the first place. However, they seem benevolent enough if we can judge them based on that one person. At any rate, they certainly need our help, assuming any of them are still alive. Hellboy has a bad habit of being late to the party. As MVP is almost dead, I think it's time I stop fooling around in the cave and take out that ghost barrier. Ghost barriers in this chapter are mostly destroyed through just ridding the tentacles, as the tentacles are what control the zombie Nazis.
Heads up.
That would be a new enemy type. These guys move much faster than the other zombie digging Nazis, but again, because I'm using Liz as a meat shield, they won't be any sort of problem. Another thing to note about Liz is that she cannot smack enemies around with, grabbed weaponry as Hellboy can. She can only hurl them. The creature using some strategy to block our direct path forward. However, there's clearly a very spooky cave over there next to the tentacles, and if there's anything we've learned, it's that Hellboy is 100% okay with spooky caves. Having a bit of trouble reaching the tentacles right away, so we're just going to clear out a few of these zombie Nazis first. Considering how little of that alien species we've seen so far, I think it's safe to assume that most, if not all of them, are dead. Unless they're holed up somewhere in some sort of protective bunker, but judging from all these swords and dangerous weaponized crystals, that does not seem like the course of action they would choose. With the tentacles down, all the zombie Nazis in the area become drastically weakened, which I think is a nice touch, considering what we know about it from the narrative. We seem to be getting further and further into the alien architecture.
Wow. You're not human.
Neither are you.
You got me there. So I guess you know something about these tentacle things, right?
We were meant to be a temporary body, an outpost on this fledgling world. But something followed us. Or maybe it was just chance. It matters not. We had to make a choice. Leave or build a prison. We could not do both.
You stayed.
What would you do?
You got me there.
All this elaborate architecture is apparently some sort of prison, and judging by that carving on the wall, it seems to also be made to tell the story of the aliens who landed here, before eventually facing extinction, it looks like, at the hands of the Nazis meddling with the giant creature. It always seems that we arrive a little bit too late to actually save anyone, although I suppose we are saving people in the future from the same mistakes. Or are we really, as no matter how much everyone seems to learn, no matter how much people wish to protect that which is close to them, the Nazis always seem to appear shortly after and screw everything up. That bullet mold we just received allows us to weaponize the crystals inside the Samaritan. The crystal bullets are a one-shot kill for the zombie Nazis, making the stage far easier than it was previously, although with Liz it wasn't exactly that hard to begin with. Even if we do destroy the creature that was previously imprisoned with these newfound crystal bullets, the Nazis will still be around. Even if they are supposedly zombified now, I'm sure some of them managed to get away with whatever power they were searching for, as they always do. And even if they left completely empty-handed, they will still continue on to ruin another civilization who sealed away a mysterious power. Regardless, as always, there's absolutely nothing we can do but continue forward and continue punching and shooting everything until we find the bad guy. As one could expect, breaking a shovel over a zombie's head does not do much to stop it. That wasn't very nice, Liz.
Finally, a break. Idiot. Just keep your damn mouth shut.
In our continued tour of this ruined civilization, it appears we've come across the largest Nazi excavation site yet. We've been given a nice break so far from the supposedly separate but larger mystery, however, it's still going to be in the back of our minds this whole time. At least the creature we are facing off has a relatively simple mission. It wants to unmake all of history. Obviously that needs to be stopped, so for once we have a concrete goal. A traveling Oasis seems to be a rather genius place to imprison a horrifying creature. However, the Nazis still managed to find it, so it can't be that genius. It seems that throughout this entire journey, we've never been entirely sure what exactly the Nazis are up to. They're always after something, but we don't know why. Even in the previous Japanese forest chapter, it's unclear why von Klimt wanted that magical artifact. It's unclear why any of the Nazis want anything they want ever. Of course, von Klimt did mention using the artifact to bring about an indestructible army, but we were never exactly told how that would be done. Von Klimt would probably be very helpful right now, actually, as he does not ever stop babbling, and he could tell us what exactly these guys are up to. Or what they were up to, rather. A journal from an archaeologist, though it's unclear whether that was a Nazi archaeologist or just someone curious about whatever may be hidden in this oasis. Either way, he had to have been nearly dead, as the legend goes. These guys right here have ranged weaponry. Their ranged weaponry does not do very much damage, but it does cause a huge explosion and can be very distracting when all you're trying to do is grab more bullets. For all of the repetition in the previous two stages, the game does do a fairly good job, I think, of introducing new enemy types and new ways to defeat said enemies, even if those are fairly ordinary. You pound demon puppets with your fist, zombie Nazis are obliterated by crystals, and you fling frogmen off of ledges. It's not incredibly deep, but it offers more variety than there would be otherwise.
Can I have a word?
Right over here we have a very, very familiar looking hammer, which could suggest that this alien species was in fact the same civilization we encountered in the previous chapter. However, now it's time for our heads to hurt again as we try and figure out how an alien civilization based in Tunisia somehow ended up in Romania. And if they did end up there somehow, why would their altar be surrounding that horrible cocoon creature when they seem very much to dislike horrible creatures that want to bring out the end of existence? Again, the only actual constant throughout our entire journey has been Nazis, Nazis, and more Nazis. The remnants of this alien civilization could have been moved to Romania for some reason, but we have no reason to believe that at all. But hey, if Hellboy can ignore everything for the sake of blind, hopeful progression, then so can we. These hammers actually do not do nearly as much damage to the zombie Nazis as the swords or crystals. Perhaps the hammers were originally intended to be decorative. The fact that they were hanging off the side of a statue seems to support that theory, and the fact that it does not match very well with the rest of the alien weaponry. That little ding noise is very satisfying. Don't know why those tentacles even bothered showing up.
Why don't you ever take me someplace nice?
Watch it.
I'm not sure if there's budget in the BPRD for vacations. I love that this ranged attack fellow set himself up behind a bunker, but I just leapt behind it anyway. This gigantic prison probably would have been a very impressive piece of architecture before the Nazis stormed through. I have to wonder if Hellboy became part of the myth after this. Did the myth change to include giant flaming fists? Or did it get its own spin-off about a man obsessed with hoarding orange crystals? These very loud explosions can actually hurt you, you just need to run straight through. Congrats to the monstrous tentacles for figuring out how dynamite works, but I think it could have better aim. This hail of bullets can be quite deadly for Liz, but Hellboy absorbs them like a sponge. They do say time flies when you're having fun. With nowhere left to go, we of course are going to leap into the giant monolith in the center here. I mean, leaping down into whatever holes we find has only led us to good places so far, right?
I gotta stop doing that.
I suppose where we are currently could be described as the real meat of the prison. We can see that the stylistic markings on the wall here are very similar to those of the hammer, so it's a pretty good bet that these aliens are indeed the same civilization we encountered in Romania, or didn't encounter, as it were. It seems that regardless of the decade in which we encounter them, they are destined to a rather gruesome end. There's not a whole lot Liz can do right here, as we're being sniped at from across a rather hefty chasm. This game isn't exactly puzzle heavy, so I was a little confused when a pathway didn't open after I punched and shot everybody. Luckily, the solution is not really a brain teaser either. One of the least hidden artifacts. I'm a little confused as to why Hellboy deems that Green Lantern ring so important. And now we see that the alien architecture is made up of a very complicated system of entire moving labyrinths. I assume this is to ward off any trespassers, though it certainly did not stop the Nazis in the slightest. It would sure make one hell of an art exhibit, though. I wonder how many Nazis threw themselves off this very ledge. I'm a little curious about how those lines on the wall are glowing. Perhaps they use the crystals. Judging by the seemingly electronic sword we've been picking up all over the place, the crystals may in fact act as some sort of primitive, or perhaps not so primitive, power source for the aliens. Maybe these Nazis were in fact after the crystals and not the creature.
This is probably not good. Okay, definitely not good.
And now we see the enormous worm-like creature that the aliens had imprisoned. Over here, I'm using some sort of defense mechanism to keep the monster in place, however, it appears to be bouncing right off of its skin. Liz is very useful here as she can keep the ever-spawning zombie Nazis busy, however we want the creature to focus on us instead so we can hurl this giant crystal into its mouth. While I try and fail to do that a few times, I think this might be a good time to point out that this worm creature seems like it might come from some sort of cocoon. Some sort of giant hanging cocoon. I can't seem to recall whether we've seen anything like that ever before. And even if we did, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, right? I mean, this is the past. Unless Hellboy completely fails to destroy this monster, which is highly unlikely, that doesn't even seem possible. Then again, we have no idea what the red roots have to do with it either, or the frogman, or what the Nazis were pumping up from underneath the creature, or what the Nazis were doing here, or what, you know what, we don't know anything. We know even less than we did previously. We consistently know less and less. I think you may have figured out by this point that by no means is the game ever going to directly give us all the answers. And now that I've been flailing around uselessly for a few minutes, I believe this is where I finally give up on throwing the crystal at its face and just use my bullets. If you know anything about boss fights, I think you probably see where this is headed. Now that the creature is completely vulnerable, we can activate these really awesome sword lasers. No, it's certainly not the highlight of originality, but I've played many worse boss fights. And the giant lasers and the boss's general weakness do have a narrative reason, so that's always a plus. In general, it's very nice when you can tie the game mechanics into the narrative in some way, no matter how simple. I think it's safe to say that their main goal with this game was to spark as many Hellboy fanfictions as possible. In fact, let's just spoil the rest of the game. The big plot twist here is that this is actually Von Klemp's own fanfiction. He gets a big kick every time somebody refuses to tell Hellboy what's going on.
I don't know what you're trying to do. You should know. Red means stop.
Hellboy eagerly admitting he has no idea what's going on, so that way he can spout his one-liner. All that's required during this second phase is that you smash the worm's face in with your giant sword. I'm sure Hellboy's having much more fun this way. As you just saw, it will begin shoving you back, but it does barely any damage, and again, we have Liz here to distract the Nazis, so we're doing just fine. I would appreciate an alternate version of this game where someone approaches the giant worm creature with diplomacy. This is giving me massive Darksiders flashbacks right now.
Sure hope this counts as a win. Heck of a way to travel.